Weiss rolled her eyes as she watched Yang skip happily down the corridor. There was something about the energy the blonde was showing that made even Weiss tired, let alone their team leader.
You're entirely too happy about this,
Weiss sighed. The blonde girl laughed, flicking her hair back over one shoulder as she turned to face them, keeping pace even as she walked backwards.
Why shouldn't I be?
Yang asked.
Furry classes are over for the day. Now we're on to the good stuff.
Weiss hummed while sharing a brief glance with Blake. The black-haired girl shrugged, before the heiress turned back to Yang. Normally, the blonde wasn't so keen for combat class with Miss Goodwitch, but then she normally wasn't so eager for Port's lectures either. She'd been a bundle of energy all morning. Scratch that. Yang had been insufferable ever since Reaper 4 2 days ago. Weiss was starting to get a headache just looking at her.
You do realize who you'll be fighting against, don't you?
Weiss asked, nodding her head towards their team leader just in case Yang had forgotten in a good cheer. Jaune didn't pipe up. No doubt he was well aware of the nightmare that faced him in this spa.
Oh, I'm aware.
Yang giggled loudly. Sometimes it was hard to see the relation between Ruby and her, but right now it was as clear as day.
This should be fun.
Fun was not the word Weiss would have used to describe facing off against their leader. In fact, she wasn't sure a single word could be used, unless it was complicated. On paper, the fight should be trivial and a foregone conclusion. Yang was stronger, faster, fitter, and more experienced. Easy, right? Winchester had probably thought that too. I wonder if Yang's mood will persist if he pulls out a taser on her, or some other outlandish weaponry. No weapons were banned now, or rather, weapons Miss Goodwitch had not sanctioned. There would be no forfeiting, and there was no way Yang was going to get distracted by Jaune pulling a fast one. Why still didn't feel confident in leaving the arena without some kind of humiliation befalling their team.
Don't fall for any of his tricks,
Blake warned, snapping her book shut.
You need to keep your wits about you. You know, I'm right here, guys.
Jaune gave Blake a flat look.
Also, shouldn't a teammate be impartial in a situation like this? Where's my advice? Use your head, preferably on Yang's fist.
Yang snorted, while even Weiss struggled to conceal her little smile. Things certainly had changed since their little field trip, though the heiress still wasn't sure exactly where their team lay. Jaune had taken steps to protect Yang, which was a good thing, a great thing even, a complicated thing. However, and one that didn't really answer anything. Why had he helped Yang? Because he cared? Because he had been in the right place at the right time? Responsibility? A mere whim? Because it was Yang. It didn't help that he refused to acknowledge it. Weiss had given up on bringing up the matter, since his response was pretty much the same as remembering Blake's name. Complete denial. She could ask. Ruby had asked. Yang was constantly asking, and yet Jaune would just raise his brow and play stupid, asking what they were even talking about. Yang claimed he was just shy. Maybe she was right. At this point, Weiss was willing to accept any excuse. So long as their team started acting like one, then she would cheer him on even if he had saved Yang just so he could have a virgin sacrifice for some evil ritual. As long as the team needs a new name started to gain some respect among the student body, it was all okay with her. In fact, as loath as she was to admit it, Weiss actually felt a little proud of him. Perhaps even more so because he didn't try to take advantage of it, or use it as an excuse to get out of work. And speaking of, you will actually fight properly against Yang, won't you? Weiss asked, fixing a suspicious look on her partner. Why was she even asking? She had no idea. You took whatever Jaune said with at least an SDC freight container of salt. That was something she had come to realize early in their partnership.
Miss Goodwitch said I would have to.
Jaune replied. Weiss didn't miss the fact he hadn't exactly said yes in that statement. Her headache quickly evolved from mild pain to Jaune. It was a new category, just below migraine. If he could read her mind, then Its name was definitely a coincidence.
You're not going to do anything
Yang winced.
creepy to me, are you? I'm not sure what you're implying. You wouldn't use some nefarious weapon against your sweet daughter, who you love beyond all others, would you?
Probably. Yang blinked.
Probably you would, or probably you wouldn't.
Jaune tapped his chin.
It's definitely one of those.
Weiss closed her eyes and counted to 10. Then, just for good measure, she counted to 10 once more. What would Winter have done in this situation, she wondered. Her older sister would have no doubt taken Jaune aside, drilled obedience into him with stern discipline and sharp words. She would have set out just how important duty was, the chain of command, authority. Somehow Weiss didn't see any of that actually working. What was worse, he would probably try and flirt with Winter too.
Just do your best.
Weiss sighed as they finally arrived at the combat hall.
Both of you.
Some of the other teams burst out in muffled conversation as they passed, eyes following their infamous team as they walked by. Weiss kept her eyes firmly ahead, their destination set as she saw the irritating, but, compared to Jaune, a wonderful child waving her arm at them. Any port in a storm was a welcome one, and for all how Ruby Rose's constant peppiness grated on Weiss's nerves, she was at least a friendly face.
It's the last lesson of the day.
Pyrrha smiled at them all, as Ruby rushed over to talk into Jaune's ear. That was another thing which had changed. Or two things, rather. Ruby now seemed closer than ever to Weiss's partner, not exactly a bad thing. But Pyrrha also seemed to be in a better mood, more willing to give him a chance. He still didn't talk with the champion. In fact, it almost felt like he avoided her for some reason. But even so, just having that peace of mind made it easier for Weiss to talk to Pyrrha.
You look awfully haggard. Can you blame me?
Weiss let out a long sigh.
I'm sure it will be fine.
Weiss raised one eyebrow.
Well, I mean, I'm sure it won't be that bad.
The other eyebrow rose to meet it.
I'm trying to make you feel better, Weiss.
Pyrrha sighed.
I appreciate the thought. I really do.
Weiss patted the girl's arm.
But we both know this, if we could even call it a fight, is going to be catastrophic. It might not be catastrophic at all.
A muscular voice interrupted, drawing Weiss's attention to Lai Ren. He hadn't looked like much to Weiss at first, but the boy's quiet and polite nature was actually quite easy to get used to. A shame it came with his polar opposite, or Weiss would have enjoyed having him on her team.
If he's against Yang, then he might actually take this seriously.
Ugh, not that crazy theory the underage dolt had spread. Ren seemed to notice Weiss's expression, for his smile said he was sorry and he didn't say anything more. It was completely silly, though she couldn't help but admit it made some small amount of sense. Very small, but it was there. Jaune had stepped in to protect Yang. He kept asking Yang to be the one to help him against Carter, and it had been the blonde girl to show the most visceral response to Jaune being targeted. Not to mention the way Yang defended him long before anyone else had. And if Ruby was to be believed, how awkward Yang had been around him initiation. Blake had been as skeptical as Weiss, but neither of them had quite been able to deny it. Sure, it didn't fit with the way most people would have gone about it, but this was Jaune Arc they were talking about. He took normal and threw it out of the window. Or he would have, if he had the freaking energy. It was more he took normal and limply let it fall off the bed. But still, if this was how Jaune Arc showed his romantic interest in Yang Xiaolong, then he needed some serious help. Help that Ruby could provide if she was so determined. There was no way Weiss was playing matchmaker. She was already a glorified babysitter. She did not need this as well. Besides, it was nonsense. The way they acted didn't make sense for two teens developing feelings for one another. Unless They had a history before Beacon. Weiss thought to herself. It would make sense since Ruby had said she didn't know every little thing about what Yang did in her free time. Yang definitely knew Arc before initiation started, so there was something. It was just figuring out what that something was. Ah, damn it. And now she'd been dragged into the conspiracy too. She didn't even care, really, other than how it might impact their team. But if they were in a relationship before, then Yang's daddy-daughter routine takes on a bit of a creepy edge. Not to mention this Coral Arc business. No. This was all a minefield Weiss had no interest in stepping into. Winter had never warned her about this kind of stuff when she would have been team leader. Then again, if she had, then Weiss would have cried out in joy when Jaune was elected instead of her. Let's just watch what happens. Weiss sighed, sitting down beside Spira, even as Blake sat on her other side. Yang and Jaune had already gone to get changed, along with the others who were expected to fight today. Miss Goodwich's stern gaze skimmed over them all, no doubt looking for any absences. Weiss didn't think a single person would have dared. 5 lines says something goes wrong, Ruby whispered past Spira.
No one is going to bet against that.
Nora giggled. Winter must never meet my team. Weiss sighed. If she ever gets wind of this, then I'll be dragged back to Atlas quicker than father can make the board of directors cry. The first match went well, without any complications. Not that anyone expected any. Russell from Team Cardin faced off against some girl Weiss had never met. A close match in which he barely edged out a victory due to his aura being a little larger. For all their animosity towards one another, Weiss didn't think he fought too badly. He was quick and strategic, just not as fast or strong as he could be. From what she could see, he had talent, but had taken no steps to hone it without training. His sister hated that sort of person. Someone who could become something more but refused to put their effort and hard work in. Winter would despise Weiss's partner. The heiress kept along with the rest of the class as the battle ended, Miss Goodwich offering her critique and instructions on how to improve. It was only a fool who didn't listen to the woman. She never repeated herself, trusting that each and every student knew full well how her wisdom might save their lives. It was such experiences that made Beacon one of the most successful and exalted schools in all of Remnant, which was exactly why Weiss's expression twisted so much when it was their turn.
Miss Xiaolong? Mr. Arc?
The woman called, and true to form, Weiss's 2 teammates stepped up into the stage. The 2 blondes walked towards the middle, before backing away from one another slowly, so that they faced off across the middle of the combat arena.
Mr. Arc?
Miss Goodwich went on.
I trust you remember the rules of this engagement? Sure.
There were a few laughs in the crowd. Weiss's teeth grounded together at that.
Recite them for me. I cannot forfeit unless my aura enters the yellow.
Jaune recited.
Nor can I invite my opponent to forfeit. There are no timeouts, nor will the match be interrupted by anyone other than yourself. Neither of us can use any weapons not previously authorized by yourself. Very good, Mr. Arc.
The teacher nodded. Jaune didn't even seem bothered by having to recite the rules, though I certainly noticed the way Winchester frowned.
Are you both ready?
Yang nodded and fell into a stance, lightly bobbing on her feet with both arms held up before her face. By comparison, Jaune didn't even draw his sword. That wasn't anything special, however. Weiss didn't think he had drawn his blade at the start of any fight so far. Then again, he hadn't been forced to properly fight yet. Yang would put a stop to that right here. For better, or for worse.
Begin.
The teacher shouted, dropping one arm and stepping away. Every single person watched with bated breath, though neither combatant made a first move. Yang seemed content to watch and wait, unwilling to be lured into some trick or trap. Blake hummed in appreciation of that, no doubt pleased to see her advice was being heeded. Weiss wasn't sure who she was supposed to support, so instead, stayed quiet. Her partner didn't look like he was going to attack, and knowing him, forfeit by virtue of the battle taking too long would be something he would not shy away from. If this was going to happen, then it would be Yang who needed to make the first move. The girl seemed to realize that, frowning for a moment before edging closer, eyes wide and alert. If anything, Weiss thought she looked too alert, like she fully expected Jaune to be capable of flying into action at any moment's notice. He shifted, Yang freezing as the leader lowered himself down just a little, as though preparing to charge. The tension in the room could have been cut with a knife, but as he refused to move even still, Yang finally lost her patience. With a quick growl and a strong push-off, she dashed forward. Jaune dodged. That wasn't unusual. Only an idiot wouldn't seek to get out of the way when Yang attacked. Nor was it unusual for Yang to give chase, unwilling to give up on the momentum as she sought to run her foe down. What was unusual, however, was the way Weiss suddenly found herself in their path, as Jaune vaulted over her head and Yang bore down on her. Weiss's life flashed before her eyes. To her horror, it looked like a cheap SDC television advert, right before something grabbed her by the arm and dragged her aside. The bench she had been sat on was reduced to sawdust, even as other students screamed and scrambled for safety. You saved me," Weiss gasped in thanks, looking up towards Ruby, who had pulled her aside at the last moment.
"Get your ass back here!"
Yang's scream cut into Weiss's attention as one blonde chased another. Jaune flipped back over a bench, kicking it up with one leg so that the end would have knocked the wind out of Yang had she run into it. She knocked it aside with the back of her hand, before spluttering as a plastic chair slapped into her face, launched by his other foot. She wrenched it aside with a growl, but he was already running once more, arms pumping furiously. Weiss was surprised he could run that fast, though she supposed he had some serious motivation. He leapt atop a table, Yang's hand slamming down on it as she prepared to climb up onto it. Blake hissed in sympathy as their leader jumped with both feet on the opposite corner, propelling the table edge by Yang up and into the bottom of her chin. She staggered back, only just dodging as Jaune leapt down and landed sitting down on a chair, using both feet to kick the table at her.
"Stop!"
Someone shouted, though Weiss couldn't tell who. The crowds were cheering now, shouting abuse or support. She couldn't tell. Yang howled her fury, chasing after Jaune as he fled to the other side of the room, students scrambling out of their way. He reached the metal lockers just as Yang reached him, but they weren't rocket ones, so Weiss wasn't sure what he was doing. They were just regular lockers for storing school bags.
"Ow!"
Nora winced loudly as Yang fell back, dazed. Her aura had defended her well enough, but having a metal locker door slammed onto her face had to sting. To her credit, she quickly leapt back onto her feet, but Jaune had ducked back, opening another locker door to block Yang's punch. It was dented badly, but he kicked open one further down, slapping the metal into Yang's knee. She flinched but kicked it shut, even as Jaune stepped back and used another. It carried on like that across the whole length of the unit. Yang would take one step forward, block a locker door, duck another, only for Jaune to give ground and keep wrenching them open. Eventually he reached the end of the locker, literal steam rising off Yang's body, which was when she choked on a backpack.
"Hey, that's mine!"
Someone yelled. Yang caught the second and threw it aside, but took a face full of a third, the fabric molding around her face. One in each arm, Jaune used another people's bags like boulders, launching one after another. Yang started to pluck them out of the air, catching and throwing them aside as fast as he could launch them, each time taking one step closer, and then another. The gap was closing. Reduced to his last school bag, Jaune went on the offensive. He swung it like a club, though using the cord handle to do so. Yang caught it with ease, wrenching it aside and throwing a punch towards him. She hit the air. Weiss groaned as she saw him crawling between her legs, having fell to the floor the moment the swinging bag had obscured her vision. Yang tried to turn, only to cry out and stumble as the legs became tangled in him. She didn't hit the floor. Neither of them did. Instead, they floated into the air, every person going deathly silent as the personification of misfortune stomped forward.
Never in my entire career
Galinda hissed.
have I seen two people decry what it means to be hunters so much.
Weiss winced. She wasn't the only one. Yang seemed to wilt as the battle frenzy faded from her eyes. The expression that took over her was equal parts contrition and fear, for a good reason.
You irresponsible, foolish children! What do you have to say for yourselves? I saw to even the battlefield.
Jaune began to say.
Enough, Mr. Ark.
Miss Goodwitch closed her eyes.
I believe I've had more than enough of you for today. For my entire life, in fact. You'll be going straight to the headmaster's office after this lesson. I will escort you there myself.
Oh gods. This was worse than Weiss could have ever imagined.
And you, Miss Xiaolong? Would you care to explain just what you were thinking? I...
Yang stammered, face red.
I'm sorry. I didn't think. No, you did not.
The teacher agreed.
Had this been real combat, your actions might have meant the death of those in the arena. What if the students here had been nothing more than untrained civilians? You do not take a battle into an area filled with unarmed people. In that case, it would be far more preferable to let a human opponent escape.
She shook the blonde girl, and Weiss couldn't help but notice the horrified look on Yang's face.
Our first duty is to protect, not to satisfy our lust for battle at the cost of those around us.
Yang didn't say anything. She looked crushed, filled with guilt. Her good mood was ruined, that was for sure. Some of the other students whispering among themselves. Teams Jazzberry and Reuben suffered along with their friend, waiting in silence.
This lesson is over.
The teacher shook her head.
I believe you have learned yours, Miss Xiaolong. Do not make this mistake again.
Yang was let go, and the other girl scurried over to Weiss and Blake. Blake touched her partner's arm, but it was clear she didn't know what to say. Weiss didn't know either. Ruby rushed up to hug her, and although Yang didn't return it, it seemed to calm her shaking just a little.
And you, Mr. Ark, are coming with me.
Miss Goodwitch scowled, levitating Jaune behind her as she stormed from the room. The blonde waved at Weiss as the door slammed shut.
So...
Hera tried. 6 faces turned to look at her, but she trailed off uselessly, quelling under their expressions. Her arm fell, the girl glancing away with a cough. Yeah, Weiss thought. That's exactly how I feel.